Now, noting that you'll probably answer this with there's no good time to have a strike, why these particular dates during the festive period? Good morning to you.
Well, we've come to a crisis in these negotiations, Nick. We haven't had an offer from the train operating companies. We believe they've been prevented from making an offer by the Secretary of State or by the Department of Transport. Where I was due to attend a meeting with the most senior people in the passenger railway on Monday at 2 o'clock. And they had told me in preparation for that they would be making a written offer on all of the issues, job conditions and pay, which you've heard about over the months. They cancelled that meeting with 55 minutes notice when we were already on our way there. And I believe that they have been prevented from doing that for some reason that you'd have to ask the Transport Minister about. And with Network Rail, we've had no new offer since the middle of the summer. They've tinkered about with some of the detail, but they've not changed the substance of what is an unacceptable offer. So we haven't had a strike for 2 months, nearly 2 months, because we've been trying to negotiate a deal with both halves of the industry, but unfortunately we're not there. And we've still got outstanding compulsory redundancy notices from Network Rail on the stocks, which we have to deal with. And our members are still concerned about their jobs, their conditions of employment, and we haven't had a pay deal for 2 or 3 years for most of these people. So it's the timing that the talks have been scuppered by the authorities that we need to progress this dispute, which is unfortunate.
Yes, I hear you. And of course, you'll be aware there are many businesses up and down the country that rely on the festive period, the Christmas period, to take in a vast amount of their money. And the argument can be made that by choosing those dates, you're going to affect them, potentially, might put them out of business, Mr. Lynch.
Well, we don't want to put anyone out of business. We want the country to be prosperous. We want our people to make a decent living for the work they do. We've been careful not to actually put any strikes on during the actual Christmas period. It depends when you regard that as being. But our strike finishes on the 17th of December. That gives the people a full week to make their preparations for travelling home around the country. It gives a full week for the preparations for Christmas. And we won't be on strike again until the new year when it's business as normal. Now, I know people don't want to hear that because it's inconvenient and it does cause disruption. We don't want to do that. We know there is a deal to be done, and deals were being shaped. And for some reason, the powers that be in this country, which is the Secretary of State, who's responsible for the railways, it's written into those contracts that he runs their industrial relations mandate and their negotiating mandate, withdrew a set of proposals that we could have developed. So that's very unfortunate. And we felt that we had no choice but to respond to that in what is a very serious industrial dispute. And so we don't want to do that. We don't want to be painted as, miseries and Grinches and all the rest of the cliches that people throw at us. We want a settlement to the dispute on behalf of our members and get the railways back to normal.
I wonder the level of public support that you think you have here. Let me read you just one of the many emails, texts and tweets that have come into LBC, Mr. Lynch. This is Janice in Hornchurch, who says, my son had the worst time being at university while I was in chemotherapy during COVID. He missed out on his industrial year in France to support his studies and lived in isolation. He did a master's at huge cost to me as a single mum. Now I won't be able to get to Lancaster to see him graduate. I was booking my train tickets this weekend. I can't drive that far due to ongoing concerns from my treatment. Will Mick Lynch run me up there from Hornchurch? It would have been a wonderful lift for us. He, referring to you, Mick Lynch, has robbed us. Mr. Lynch.
Well, that's unfortunate, and I don't want that to happen. There are still 3 weeks before the first days of action. I don't know when this lady is planning to travel, and we certainly don't target particular people or particular sectors of our community. Our members will lose their wages as part of this. That's what striking is all about. But they're making a sacrifice in return for securing their futures. Now, if the government can put themselves in a position where they facilitate an agreement, we can call off this action. And there will be lots of stories. I get lots of communications, Nick, telling me that people are fully behind us. When I come on into your studio, we get lots of texts and messages telling us that this is necessary because people are tired of the way they're being treated by corporate Britain. Low pay, insecure work, the threat of redundancy, and of course, the cost of living crisis. Trade unions cannot be passive in the face of such aggression from their employers and indeed from the government. So that's what our responsibilities are to our members. And we are sorry for the inconvenience that causes and the distress, as this lady has pointed out to you.
Can I just run a couple of figures past you? Is it true that there has been a pay offer of 8% over this year and next, and the deal worth up to 13% for those on the lowest of salaries? Are those figures correct, Mr. Lynch?
No, they're not correct. The deal that we've been offered is a deal over 3 years. We didn't get a pay rise on Network Rail last year, and they're offering 4% this year and 4% next year. That is in return for thousands of job cuts and conditions of service changes that our members find entirely unacceptable, which will mean some people working permanent nights, an increase in weekend work above the current provisions, and changes to their terms and conditions in detail that they find unacceptable. And it's also predicated, Nick, on a 50% cut in inspections and maintenance scheduled tasks on our railway. We've not seen an offer that gives anyone 13%. Nobody's written that down. And nobody sent it to us, and we would consider it. But 8% over 3 years is not acceptable. Inflation, the retail price index last week was 14.6%.
If we talk percentages, you'll be aware of the study that shows that your members have enjoyed a 39% lift in the median wage over the last 10-year period, compared with 28% in other sectors. That would seem to suggest that you, and I'm sure your colleagues, the skills you represent as unions, you've actually done rather well for your men and women.
Well, we're proud of what we do for our union.
Well, if you've done that well, why strike again, Mr. Lynch?
Well, because we're falling behind. And if workers fall behind compared to the cost of living, they get poorer. And while that's happening, the rich are getting richer, dividends are being paid out, profits are being made. The railway companies last year made a £500 million profit. They could pay for this pay deal, they could pay for the conditions, and they could get a settlement as quickly as possible. Those executives that I deal with know how to get a deal. They're being prevented from doing that by the political considerations of the Conservative Party and this government, who are taking a macho stand and won't come on the airwaves and tell you what's going on. They won't appear on any of the panel shows that I do. I am here to take the criticism and defend our position and defend our members' position, but they will not account for the fact that they cannot even run a railway when we're not on strike. We have not been on strike for 2 months, and this railway has been in crisis all the way through that, with as much disruption caused by the inefficiencies and incompetence of the railway companies and the government as there is by the train strikes in general terms.
Just lastly, the fact that you do appear on this show regularly is noted, and the fact that the government doesn't always, you're right to point that out. And lastly on that, when you met a previous Transport Secretary, and goodness knows there have been enough, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, you said it was, quotes, a good meeting with a positive attitude, close quotes. What dealings have you had with her replacement, Mark Harper, and how would you characterise his stance on this?
Well, that was a 30-minute meeting. She gave us warm words and then got sacked, and nothing happened as a result. And that was during this period where we have not got an agreement.
You might have been the cause of that, of course, Mr. Lynch, but do go on.
If only I had that kind of power, Nick. I don't think that. I think it was an internal crisis in the Tory party. Look, Mark Harper has not said the bellicose stuff that Grant Shapps was saying. I'm hoping for a meeting with on Thursday that will be positive. I always go into these meetings with a positive attitude, whether it's a Labour politician, Tory, or a local politician. We have to deal with these people. I'm putting him under pressure. I'm putting him on the spot. That's my job. And I'll go in tomorrow and shake his hand and say, look, we want to do a deal with you. We want to work constructively. And if you can help us with that, I don't expect him to be in there in detail talking about guards, rosters and train crew diagrams and all the rest of it. But I do expect him to give the people that he instructs, which is the train operating companies, the license and the ability, and a bit of dosh, frankly, to get this deal over the line. That's my job. And if it's a Tory party, a Liberal, a Scottish nationalist, we deal with all of them, and Welsh Labour politicians, we will deal with them. And every other place, we've done deals. In Scotland, the railways have got deals. In Wales, the railways have got deals. In London, we've got a pay deal. It's everywhere the Conservative Party is not running the railway. We've got deals put to bed and no disputes running at the moment.
Grateful as ever for your time. Thank you for coming on. Mick Lynch is General Secretary of the RMT.